to talk some Kaiju number 8. So, Dan, introduce yourself.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Dan from DanExclaims. I talk about Kaiju number 8, and I talk about My Hero Academia and its spin-off My Hero Academia Vigilantes.
Kaiju number 8.
Got Batman in it.
So,
Sorry.
before I start talking, and you know I can talk, you've given your kind of summary thoughts. So, I've already seen your latest video on Kaiju number 8. Can you give me an exclusive? Like, has there been a thought gurgling in the back of your brain that you just wanted to talk about?
Well, I haven't really started making theory videos for Kaiju number 8 yet, because I still think that the series is really, really young.
Mm-hmm.
And by really, really young, I mean like within the next couple of chapters, I think we're going to meet the main bad guy for the series.
Okay.
I have a feeling that
let's put a pin there. You said you think the series is really, really young.
Yeah.
And you said you think within the next few chapters we're gonna get the main bad guy.
Yeah.
What's the connection there? What's the connection between a series being young and meeting the main bad guy?
So I would say around chapter 50 or so of My Hero, and like around chapter I think it was 60 or 70 of Naruto.
Mm-hmm.
You were introduced to the concept of no, I'm thinking of Bleach.
Mm-hmm.
You were introduced to Aizen, and you were introduced to Stain and Shigaraki, and then All for One.
Okay. So it appears to me that what you're saying is, and this is just a side note, that it is kind of traditional in a manga that at a certain, maybe not a set chapter number, but at a set story beat, you introduce the big bad.
Exactly. You've introduced
the
all
number
of the characters.
Stories between the beginning of the manga and the introduction of the big bad will give you a feel for how long the manga is going to run, barring intervention.
Yeah, exactly. So
okay, thanks.
In Chainsaw Man, you meet the main bad guy in the first episode, in the first chapter. So there are series that will establish the bad guy from the very first chapter. You'll even have in Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer got right to it because those two stories were very short and sweet stories. By telling us that we're going to be if you're in chapter 47 and we still don't know who the main bad guy of this series is, you can look forward towards that series being more than 100 chapters, more than 150 chapters.
I'm going to make a note because I've got a question I want to throw at you, but I want to get your ideas first. So keep going.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Okay, so you're saying this is a very young series. We're only 47 chapters in. If it goes 47 chapters before we meet the main bad, before we've even met the main bad guy, then
I would say that just because like you've had so many instances in manga where it kind of lines up that if a story runs longer than 100 chapters, you usually don't meet your main bad guy within the first 20. So that's the precedent that I'm seeing being set in Kaiju number 8.
And of course, this thought train started because you were explaining why you haven't made any theory videos yet. So
it's really that's like it. It's I need to see more to make more confident guesses.
Okay, I guess that's a difference in our styles there. I like to get just enough to jump in and start running, and I like to run around in circles. It's a
see that's the thing. I circles are great, but I always like straight lines. I like to guess what's gonna happen right before it happens, just
and you
because
like to guess accurately.
Yeah. I don't like to have a low success rate. But the thing is, I love to be wrong at the same time. Like if I make a theory video, and my crowd can attest to the Compass Kid theory, when I make a theory that it becomes the biggest L on the planet, people lose their minds. It's hilarious. If I'm just so wrong, they'll just go to my videos and just go to they'll just leave a comment going, Dan, you got another one. They'll just do that. And I love them for it just because of that. But recently, stories like Kaiju Number 8, stories like My Hero Academia, they've become more predictable because, one, I read it week to week and I break it down and analyze it down to the millisecond. Like, when it comes to those stories, at least, Kaiju Number 8, it's easy to predict what'll happen next because it's so young that the trajectory, and I've said this so many times, that the trajectory of the show is just kind of easy to see. You know what's going to happen. You knew that Kafka wasn't going to be able to skeet by in this entire series. No one ever is when they have a quote unquote hiding the power ability, Yeah.
So what is your opinion of what I call the corkscrew method of writing, of plot writing? Because this is a shonen manga, and anyone old enough to do a shonen manga is old enough to know that the course trajectory of the plot is going to be predictable. I mean, if it's a shonen manga, it's a shonen manga. That's a tautology, but you know what I mean. So Matsumoto, I think, has really mastered corkscrew plot twists, where you don't see it coming. It's a decent plot twist. It does not ultimately affect the overall trajectory, but it does take the story kind of sideways in a way you weren't expecting.
The word that I've been using for Kaiju Number 8 is that there's a lot of parallel progression. Where
explain that to me, please.
Parallel progression is, instead of progressing forward, we're now progressing sideways, where we find things that are not necessarily that are capped. They're like at a cap, but they're better than each other. So you meet Mina, but then you meet Gen. It's like you have those people. And then Kikoru is turning out to be as strong as them as she progresses. So that's the parallel progression. You're seeing more characters parallel to one another that are at the same.
Fleshing out the world and the story.
Exactly.
Okay, putting more effort into building the story around the main character rather than driving the story forward and keeping it thin.
Exactly. Now you know who the director general is. You know who the vice captain of the first division is. You now know who the captain of the first division is. Now you know 2 divisions. Now you have to learn about the other people that inhabit Division 1. That's who Kafka's gonna meet. And that's who he already has been meeting as the chapters go on.
Okay. Interesting. So okay. Do you have any theories that you'd be willing to share so far, or should we just move on?
Theories that I have.
Or thoughts about this world, things that you've noticed.
So I have one theory that I'd be willing to share, as long as you don't make a video on it, Betty.
Of course not. Just between you and me.
Just between you and me. The contact versus eyeball theory.
Okay.
If it's a contact, for what I'm talking about, if it's Gen's eye is a contact.
Gen has numbers weapon 1.
Yeah.
And
he has the irises of number 1.
Yes.
So now it tells me 2 things. An iris doesn't. I don't know contacts very well.
Okay,
but
so quick biology lesson. This is going to irritate me if I don't correct you. He has the retina of number 1. So you have an eyeball. The back end that connects to the nerve that goes directly to your brain is the retina. The retina is the flat surface covered in cells that actually catches light. The iris is the things that open and closes. So Gen's iris is connected to the retina of Kaiju number 1. So continue.
It's a good thing we have this conversation then, because now that opens it up to the fact that there is no contact lens. That's that's a surgical thing. He has a piece of a kaiju planted inside of him.
Okay, that was my thought as well. But yeah, the retina is not the lens, it's the actual receptive surface, the back of the mirror.
So now it makes sense why he has white hair.
Okay.
It's the same thing that Mina has. So now we know what that thing around Mina's head is. She has something as well. That's probably why she can also control a tiger.
All right, connect the dots for me there. It's been a while since I looked at Mina's head.
Okay, so if you look at Mina in the colored drawing, she has a white spot in her hair.
Okay.
The white spot in her hair, Gen has the same white spots in his hair.
I missed
So,
that.
what do you mean? When Gen pulls his hair back, it's literally all white.
Oh no, I missed that Mina had it as well.
Oh yeah, Mina has a part of her hair that's white. So
Okay.
my guess is that those two are connected just because the organs. So there's probably some sort of organ planted inside of Mina as well. That's why she's able to take a cannon and shoot a kaiju in half.
Okay. So you go for the implanted.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it could go one of two ways. The reason why I don't think that it's the suits is because we saw a drawing of the director general,
yeah.
and he didn't have any gray hair or white hair. So
Yeah.
if my original theory was if you use too much of the suit, it drains your life force or whatever it might be, or weakens you, like an equivalent exchange kind of thing going on. So
how would as an implant? I was really thinking about that. How would numbered weapon 1 work as an implant?
probably
Because does that mean they just have a giant chunk of retina in the lab somewhere and they make a new RT001 for every wielder, or are they going to have to cut out his eyes when it eventually kills him and pass them on to the next wielder? And how many wielders have there been, and what happened to them?
So having your eyes removed is a very Japanese kind of thing, even though that type of mutilation is kind of looked down on in the Japanese culture. Or having arms removed, dismemberment in general, not a good thing in Japanese culture. But they do it plenty of times in manga. Fire Punch cuts his arm off to feed his entire family. It's also, if no one here has ever read Fire Punch and you like Chainsaw Man, please read Fire Punch. It's a fantastic manga, and it's more or less like a prequel to Chainsaw Man. It's fantastic. Read Fire Punch. But as I was saying,
so because it's RT00001, I'm assuming it's the same numbers weapon that they made from the way back when, probably in the 60s.
Well, that and you got to remember that these things are, if they're, kilometers, I don't even know, what was that? I don't even remember what the largest.
Yeah, I made a point of that in my video. No, we saw number 2, and number 2 was gigantic. And of course, you can always cut out a smaller piece of the retina, but even the cells themselves are going to be gigantic. So how would that work? And I trust Matsumoto enough to trust that he's put some thought into this.
I mean, he's definitely put some thought into this because he's doing some of the smartest writing.
Yeah.
Like the way that he's writing his characters is he's making you sympathize with them. Oh. And I always kind of think back to Hoshina when he said, look around you. There are people here that are going to die. So I think you're going to start seeing Matsumoto put the jets on for Kaiju number 8 pretty soon because we haven't gotten a death yet. And we're in the military here.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting some casualties to eventually happen and Kafka have to step up and Kafka learning how to, suffering loss. Because the thing is for our main character is he's One Punch Man.
Yeah.
He's already at the top of the mountain. Now it's about how does he use his power? How creative can he be? Like when he started out, he was out when we first meet Kafka, he's at the bottom. He's literally nothing. And now he's arguably the savior of the entire planet strong.
Yeah.
So he goes from being weak and useless to Superman.
Yep.
That's what Kaiju number 8 is excelling at.
Yeah. So kind of off that, one thing that I really liked is how well Matsumoto has humanized the military high command. It's so easy to make them come off as one note antagonists. But especially in this chapter 47, you really feel the tension. And Matsumoto uses the tension between what you know as the reader. You know Kafka is the MC. He's almost certainly not going to go rogue again. But you can just see the logical reasons why. You can see that Director General Shinamaya and Narumi specifically, they're concerned about that and they're watching him. And in any other manga, I feel that that would have been presented as unfair and mean and petty. But the way Matsumoto has written this, the way he's got you to sympathize with the characters, you really feel that no, this is a logical conclusion that they're coming to, and they're being more than just with him, with Kafka. They're doing more than justice. They're being.
So, see, you actually brought me down like a train of thought just now that makes me think like, is Kafka gonna? Because one of my other things was, is Kafka gonna start absorbing kaiju, and taking their like strength?
Yeah.
Is that gonna become like a thing eventually? Because that's the one thing I like is, will they delve into like the horror aspect of what kaiju are? Because we've seen that Matsumoto draws some pretty gnarly looking kaiju.
Yes.
So I want to see like a kaiju devour someone finally. That's just me.
Yeah. Okay, so mind if I throw a theory at you?
Go for it.
It's more of a question.
Okay.
So in every single combat manga, the main the MC and the secondary characters essentially have some form of ESP. It's a sort of stylization of the fact that martial arts does give a martial artist greater situational awareness than a non-martial artist. And they, of course, crank that up to 11 for the manga. So in every single manga I've ever read, the main characters have a battle awareness that is superhuman for all intents and purposes, even the most grounded and realistic of manga. So I don't know if this is going to be anything story related, but these last two chapters kind of really drove home that Kikoru does have functional combat ESP. And it's been pointed out 3 specific times in the story now. So it's kind of standing out in my brain. The first one was her very first interaction with Kafka was saying, why do you reek of kaiju? But having the excuse handy that he was in kaiju disposal made us mentally brush that off and move on. The second one was, despite only being exposed to Kaiju No. 9's finger guns once, being caught completely off guard and having no time to analyze it, she still figured out the tell well enough to explain it to Reno.
Okay.
And so you have her sight being extraordinary, her vision being, and her sense of smell being extraordinary.
Remember, that's also the suit too. So.
Well, yeah.
That she constantly wears. She never takes it off.
Then in this, and again, they were I didn't really think about them at the time, but in this latest chapter, Kafka asks her to take care of the ant kaiju while he goes and trounces No. 9.
Yeah.
Then she's turning and she's facing the ant kaiju and focusing on them. Then No. 9 generates the wings to make the gun cannons, and he's clearly reaching out and controlling the other kaiju at that time with his psychic energy. And seemingly in response to the psychic energy, Kikoru shudders, and more importantly, Matsumoto takes a full panel to focus in just on her reaction. And she turns around, turning her attention away from the targets that she's supposed to be focusing on to look back at Kaiju No. 9, right? And she turns before his wings fully manifest. Now, that could simply be an example of the suit enhancing her hearing, and she heard him manifesting those wings, which would have made a really nasty sound, almost certainly.
Yeah.
But it does seem to be that Matsumoto might be hinting that she has kaiju-related ESP for some reason. And yes, she always does have the suit on, but if she's the only one manifesting that, and she is, it's got to be more than just the suit.
I mean, if there was some messed up theory going on that like Isao put like kaiju organs in his daughter when she was developing to create the greatest kaiju slayer ever, that would be some messed up manga. But I wouldn't put it past Isao, especially. But like at the same time, I don't think we saw that prior to his wife dying. He wasn't as much of a stonewall person
Yeah.
They, you know, and
So because of that, I've sort of I see three different ways this is going. One is just she is a essential secondary character in a shonen manga. It's entirely possible that she just has that shonen manga standard battle sense. The just barely heightened perceptions that makes her super effective on the battlefield. The cranking reality up to 11 to make a really good manga. And right now, that's all we have enough evidence to say firmly. Then the second one is that it was done to her, but given how much the series has made about how the battle suits affect the wielders, I was thinking it would be more along the lines of her mother and her father were both doing this before she was born, and their bodies were constantly exposed to this, and her body. And so, you know how there's a lot, for many, many years, people thought that children inherited their parents' STDs 100% of the time.
yeah.
But it turns out that most of the time the children just inherited the antibodies, and the tests could only test for the antibodies. And having Kikoru having kaiju sensing abilities would make sense if if these human bodies are constantly reacting to what is essentially a foreign body in their system, that their kids would have a reaction to that foreign body built in. So, like, she inherited an allergic reaction to kaiju because her
So you're saying
mom.
that she could arguably be the perfect test subject for a kaiju organ, or you're saying she already is like a
Well, I mean, she's already had that
growing up
kaiju medical
kaiju?
technology, and and Matsumoto very specifically doesn't let us know exactly what that is.
Gotcha.
Probably because Matsumoto hasn't fully developed that side story yet, but possibly because Matsumoto's keeping us from knowing. But yeah, I'm saying that she might have an allergic reaction to kaiju that acts as a sixth sense.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past. I mean, I could say that that's like a logical theory. Definitely, is just a logical theory. But honestly, I would just go with the fact that it's like I get it. It's a good theory, you know. That
Yeah.
both the parents were really good kaiju slayers, and they have a kid, and you know, since they wore suits the entire time that were prototype suits from the beginning, you know, maybe their offspring was a little bit messed up, but you know, for the good. But I
And
do
then, of
think
course, I do have kind of a third theory, which is in this genre, the kaiju are essentially taking the place of what yokai would be in a fantasy genre.
yeah.
And we know that you have kaiju slaying families going back 5 to 700 years.
Yep.
Because of Vice Captain Hoshina.
Yep.
And this is a manga. It's entirely possible that you have certain bloodlines of humans that are they have that natural ability to sense kaiju. And it just runs in the family because that would actually be, natural selection speaking, a great advantage in this world. So that Kikoru is the science fiction shonen manga equivalent of the daughter of a long line of priests who has ESP.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's something just that's natural in her bloodline, and it just probably shows up more commonly in defense force officers, because if you have that ability, you make a better defense force officer.
Yeah.
And those are my kind of three ideas. It was either done to her inadvertently, it's just because it's a shonen manga and she's a shonen protagonist, she has the battle combat sense, or that she's the science fiction equivalent of a Miko, basically.
Huh. Never thought of it that way.
Well, that's why we have these conversations.
I agree.
So, have you noticed Deputy Director Itami in any significant way?
What do you mean?
I think Matsumoto is building up to learning more about him and his backstory. The look in Itami's eyes whenever anything interesting happens, he's clearly playing the straight man to Director Shinomiya at the moment. But from the facial expressions and body language that Matsumoto has been putting into Atami, I get the feeling that he's actually quite the mad lad
So
and
you think
prone.
that since he's got the scar, he's the bad guy?
No, no, no. I think that as Director General Shinamaya's second in command, as a respectable member of the Defense Force, as a high-ranking officer, he's keeping himself firmly under control. But I think I think that if we get to see the deputy director cut loose, he's going to be every bit as crazy as Narumi.
I mean, I'm not saying that he's definitely not one of the strongest kaiju slayers in the building, but he definitely is. Though I haven't seen like I get like the Sir Barristan feeling from him, where like in the books of Game of Thrones, Sir Barristan is like this ridiculous swordsman that kills like 20 people in a room. Like that's the type of guy that I picture him to be. I don't know if he's like nefarious.
I'm not thinking nefarious. I'm thinking he's the kind of guy who won't willingly cause chaos if he knows it'll hurt people.
Exactly.
But he's darn well going to enjoy every bit of chaos he can get his grubby mitts on in the natural course of events.
Because when you think about it, the only person in the Defense Force that we haven't seen fight yet is him.
Yeah, the only one who's consistently worn a suit.
Yeah, exactly. He's the one that hasn't fought yet. You saw Gen fight. You saw Gen show up with those eyes because he was ready to kill Kafka right then and there when it first happened.
Yeah.
And now they're working together, and I got a feeling. Do you read or watch Demon Slayer at all?
It's one of those ones I started with great interest, but life got in the way, so I haven't had a chance to catch up yet, and I don't want to engage with it until I've caught up.
All right, so for the crowd though, I got a feeling Gen is gonna get Rengoku'd. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so I'll find out what that means eventually, I'm sure. So speaking of Gen, we now have the revelation of what the numbers 1 weapon is and what it essentially what its powers are. It's a kaiju analysis, a kaiju interior analysis.
Yep.
So, and we have him interacting with Kafka, and then we have this big question of where does Kafka's human body go when he transforms?
Exactly. That's
because
so. Did you saw my video, right, where I said that I think it's more of like, I think I said this too before in one of our chats where I said that the symbiote, because that was going to be one of my theory videos, is the fact that the symbiotes from Marvel and the and the kaiju from Kaiju number 8 are very similar to one another. They're like so remarkably similar to one another that it just makes total sense. They're creatures that bond to a host with a singular goal. Kafka's kaiju with a singular goal is kill kaiju. So like he has the urge to kill anything that's a kaiju. When he's fighting against Isao, kaiju number 8 takes over Kafka's body because he feels the energy coming from the director general, and that energy is kaiju energy. So that's why he's like must kill kaiju. So I think that's like his venom thing is eat, Carnage thing is kill. And you have all these symbiotes have their one driven goal. And that's, for my longest time, I've been saying that the reason why Kafka, you can only see parts of him is because he becomes Kaiju number 8, and Kaiju 8 number 8 becomes him. So like when you saw that him inside of the body that one time, you only saw his torso and his arms, and the rest of it was the Kaiju because he turns into it, so he can turn into himself inside of himself.
Interesting.
I think about it like not like Attack on Titan, because Attack on Titan, whether we want to say it or not, is Meat Gundam.
Yes.
I've been trying to say that for years. It's just Meat Gundam, and it really is. Instead of shooting people and slicing people with swords and guns, they're eating each other. You take away you put the Titans in space and give them swords and shields, and it's Gundam. Like that's 100%. And I mean that in the nicest way to Attack on Titan fans. I just didn't mess with the ending. I hated it. So as I was saying, though, so I think that the reason why Kafka was able to see himself and be inside of himself is because his relationship with the kaiju is a symbiosis akin to Carnage and Cletus Cassidy, not like Eddie Brock and Venom, because Venom and Eddie Brock have a rejected symbiosis where Venom just inhabits Eddie Brock's body while Carnage becomes a perfect one-to-one with him. Yes, somebody can be stripped of their symbiote because, the sound or whatever it might be might strip it away from him, but Cletus Cassidy will always have Carnage because Carnage merged with him. So even if it gets stripped away from him, Carnage will eventually redevelop inside of Cletus Cassidy's body. That's the same thing that I feel is the same for Kafka. That's why he's able to regenerate his arms and his legs and stuff like that, is because his body is so in symbiosis with this kaiju that there's no stopping him at that point.
Yeah, I can see where you get that theory. I kind of lean more towards the Kafka's human body is getting tucked away into pocket space theory, but I can definitely see where you're going there.
Yeah, I don't know about the pocket space thing.
Yeah.
To be frank.
But yeah, there's I don't see that there's enough data to go either way because it's still a really young series.
That's what I mean. You're completely right. The whole thing is is Kaiju number 9 wants to rip the kaiju out of Kafka. So that means when Kafka is in his normal form, there's a kaiju inside of him.
Are number 9's intentions that fully developed, that fully articulated? Because he wasn't even sure. Yeah, he wasn't even sure who Kaiju number 8's human host was, or if Kaiju number 8 had a human host. And so, yeah, Kaiju number 9 is just a mystery box. But kind of circling back to this whole symbiosis thing, I found this last chapter just so intensely satisfying because of the smile. And that was such a perfect combination of 3-beat arc on 3-beat arc on 3-beat arc that I was just, in the moment, I didn't even notice it. I just got really, really warm and fuzzy when I saw Kafka give Kikoru that smile. But when I went back and I actually started analyzing it, it was just a whole different level of warm fuzzies on an intellectual level, because the whole storyline starts out with Kafka trying to essentially reclaim his humanity by comforting the old man who he's just terrified, and he tries to smile. And it's just this horrific, gaping, open mouth maw. Yeah. And then he goes out into the street and he tries to comfort the little girl. And he tries to smile, and it's not as bad as the first one, but it's still pretty dang horrific. And he can see that it's terrifying her, so he gives up trying to comfort her like that and just says, "It's okay, I'm leaving." So he's having to separate himself from the community for the greater good. And then I think there was one more time, and then the next time
he gives up on even trying to smile as Kaiju number 8, and he just turns his head back into Kafka.
Yeah, he turns his head back into a Kafka in a dangerous situation, therefore having to risk his life and the life of the people he's protecting to maintain that sense of community. Yep. And then once he gains full control of this body, now he can smile comfortingly as Kaiju number 8 because he's got full control even of the bony plates of the face.
Yep, that's what they were saying though about, because remember what preceded that smile was him saying that ever since he lost control, he feels like he has more control.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a whole nother issue. I'd been kind of feeling from the start, I'd been getting from the start that the little guy was either directly influencing him or giving him the information he needed, because he pulls off all of these moves suddenly when he could not have practiced them or anything like them beforehand. And with this, they're openly recognizing that Kafka thinks he's just learning by example, but it really does look like the kaiju symbiote is either teaching Kafka or directly influencing his actions.
I would say, or working towards perfectly merging with him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another concept. Kaiju number 8 We've reached some fascinating chapters, and I cannot wait for the next chapter. I cannot wait to see where the series is going, because Matsumoto is such a good writer. We're looking at basically an infinity of different paths we could go down. We've reached a corridor. There's a dozen different doors leading. We don't know which one Matsumoto is going to open, and I can't wait to see it. So what do you think, Dan?
Look, I'll tell you right now, I think that what Kaiju number 8 is putting up on its shoulders is the possibility of carrying Shonen Jump for the next couple of years. It's at 47 chapters. It doesn't look like it has any intentions of slowing down whatsoever, because what's going on right now in the manga is setting up something to happen further down the line to draw in more people. You'll see an anime eventually down the pipeline, and this could arguably be, because remember, what is it in France? It's the biggest, in France, it is the largest selling manga ever, which means that this manga is taking it by storm.
An entire building.
Exactly.
Skyscraper. They rented a skyscraper to be their poster.
So Kaiju number 8 is going to be one of the best and greatest manga of the 2020s.
Yes.
Guarantee it.
This is not just a manga with legs. It's a manga with legs with rocket boosters in them.
Exactly. This is, literally, this monster jumps in the air, holes form at the bottom of the soles of his feet, and it's only a matter of time before this dude figures out that he can fly like a butterfly.
All right, so everybody go check out Dan's channel, hit the like and subscribe button, plug your plugs, Dan.
Look, first of all, Betty, thank you for having me. I absolutely love doing these, because you're one of the only people besides Grimm that I can actually talk to about Kaiju number 8. So many people out there have no idea that Kaiju number 8 exists, and right now, pretty much it's like me, Betty, and Grimm are like the 3 channels that actually talk about Kaiju number 8, and they talk about it a lot more than I do, and they go into extensive detail. I break stuff down, but they break stuff down crazy deep, and I love watching their videos so much. So Betty, thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait till we do this again. Hopefully, when I'm not adulting, I can just come here and we can just talk for hours on end.
Okay, that sounds great. Peace out.
All right, catch you later.
Humans Are Weird. We Took a Vote. Available on Indiegogo for the month of October 2020 and available for in demand through November. Humans Are Weird. We Took a Vote. Monty Python meets Star Trek in the second book of Human Absurdity, a short story collection that will have you chuckling for years to come. Humans Are Weird. We Took a Vote. Available on Indiegogo. Go and get your copy now.